LinkedIn is pretty amazing at helping you grow your small business. We cannot stop your new clients from emailing you at 3 a.m. We can help you sell, market, and hire in one place. We cannot help you be in 3 places at once. And while we can't help you organize your calendar, LinkedIn can help you land more clients so you have a calendar to organize. Grow your small business on LinkedIn. Learn more at linkedin.com/smallbusiness.
Start your day with Quaker Protein Instant Oatmeal. The instant oatmeal ready to help you tackle whatever your day brings. Like wrangling your toddler into their car seat. That was fun. Coaching your 6th graders soccer team. Go girls! And carrying all the groceries in one trip. Whew. Try Quaker Protein Instant Oatmeal, granola, and bars. Great taste and a good source of protein. Quaker, bring out the good.
Hello and welcome back to the Dunbar End podcast here on the Hibs Observer. I'm Jack Harris, as ever joined by Hibs Observer editor Patrick McPartlin. We now know the teams and timings of Hibs' 5 post-split fixtures. Patrick, first of all, what are your initial thoughts?
I think it's a decent set of fixtures. There's a lot of excitement with playing Motherwell on the final day of the season. That could be pivotal in the race for Europe. First post-game split, obviously the final Edinburgh derby of the season as well, which means there's next to no chance of Hearts being able to win the league at the home of their biggest rivals. So that's, a big sigh of relief, I think, for everyone of a green and white persuasion. And I think 3 home fixtures as opposed to 2 away fixtures is probably something to be celebrated as well. And you would hope that it doesn't take until the final day of the season to sort out if Hibs are finishing 4th or not. But if it does, and knowing Hibs, it almost certainly will, then it gives you something to think. Well, gives us something to think about going into the final week of the campaign. There'll still be plenty to talk about. So I think could have been a lot worse. I think
could have been, and as we've said a lot, it is going to be quite a tight battle in that race for 4th. Obviously, the gap's been cut from 6th to 3rd with the results this weekend, but you would expect it at least to go on up until that build-up. It would be quite surprising if the business was all finished by the time the Steelmen come to Easter Road on the 16th of May.
It has been that sort of season. I don't think anything's a sure thing, and nothing's a given. And I think there's probably plenty more twists and turns left in this Scottish Premiership season. Not just for Hibs, but for every team. So it'll be an interesting set of fixtures, and midweek trip there to Ibrox in the middle of I think it's the home games against, or there's a game against Falkirk and then possibly Motherwell after that. I was going to mention it's a difficult final week, but not one that is beyond Hibs getting a fair number of points, which could be crucial.
I was going to mention that game against Falkirk, obviously the 3rd time that Hibs will have been to the Falkirk Stadium. Not a particularly happy hunting ground. It was that draw, 2-2 draw at the start of the season, and then the result that we don't want to talk about, but that 4-1 defeat, not all that long ago, but it does feel like a very long time ago. So I guess there would be some trepidation about having to go back there.
Yes and no. I mean, for David Gray, he'll see it as a chance to change history in positive ways. As he likes to say, yes. They won't be thinking about previous visits. It's not what they do. They just focus on what's coming up. They focus on the next game. Focus on getting 3 points every time they play. So I think it could be a chance for Hibs to kind of exercise the ghosts of previous visits there. But I think it's in the wider context of the season. At that stage, it's probably just about trying to get 3 points and leave relatively unscathed in terms of injuries and the such like.
Yeah, and then obviously you mentioned the trip to Ibrox, and then that what feels like it will end up being season-defining game right at the end of the split with Motherwell, 12:30 on the 16th. That should be an interesting one, but that's the news so far.
I think it's probably worth remembering that I don't think Hibs had a great record in the post-split fixtures last season, which is maybe kind of glossed over by the fact that overall it was a good second half to the campaign. They obviously finished 3rd and qualified for Europe. So I think it'll be interesting to see if, not just if Hibs can improve on their sort of post-split performance last season, but also just, perform well against top 6 teams, because when we look at their form and the results this season, they have struggled against the other top 6 teams. And I think for David Gray on a personal level, for the team collectively, this is going to be a good chance to see if there has been progress made, if they are able to get a few more positive results against the sides that have been sort of there or thereabouts around them for most of the season. So that'll be that's the kind of the subplots, I think, if you like.
Yeah, definitely with that latter three, because correct me if I'm. Oh no, there was the Hibs winner Easter Road over Falkirk, but definitely looking at Rangers and Motherwell yet to win against either of those two sides. So that'll be a fantastic opportunity to say it with us now, change history in positive ways, at least recent history. But let's look back a little bit. So let's go back to Hibs' win against Kilmarnock at the weekend. I think one of the big story from that was the performance of Owen Elding. We've discussed that in detail, a really fantastic display, but I think that maybe took some of the sheen off of what was a pretty fantastic display from Felix Passlack.
Yeah, goal and an assist, and taking him to, I think, 3 goal contributions in 8 appearances, which for a kind of right back, whatever you want to call it, is pretty good going. And I think it's really one of the key reasons why they brought him to the club, because you look at how well stocked Hibs are on the left side for sort of attacking threat, and I think David Gray just needed something like that on the right hand side. And you look at Passlack in his time at Bochum, and he wasn't really doing as much attacking by the looks of it. He's certainly been doing that at Hibs, and he's been, I think, just really given the right flank a new kind of lease of life, if you like, and just sort of giving opposition teams something to think about, because he loves those driving runs. He's coming inside. I think we noticed at the weekend that he was coming inside, and Miguel Chaiwa was sort of shifting out wide to cover him. And then when Kai Andrews came on, he was doing the same. So I think you look at him and you look at this. I think he's 5'7", 5'8". He's not the biggest. You compare him to somebody like Lewis Miller, who would come barreling into the box at set pieces, and was always an aerial threat. He's a different sort of player to Miller, but he has that attacking threat. He's got that eye for goal. 2 goals in 8 games, including that goal at Celtic Park, and obviously his goal on Saturday. Just that kind of running to the back post. I think that's been wing back to wing back on both occasions. Yeah. Which, when you're playing 3-5-2, is one of the things you just really have to be good at. And being honest, Hibs haven't been great at that this season. So it's on a personal level for him, he must be pretty chuffed. And for David Gray, it's a case of bringing somebody to the club who you want to contribute in an attacking sense, who's doing exactly that. And I think he's certainly settled a lot more into sort of Scottish football. I think there were a couple of moments on his debut where he did look a little bit.
It was a little bit of an inauspicious start.
A little bit, but I mean, understandable when you arrive at the club and then you're pitched into action almost straight away, which is probably a sign of how kind of highly rated he was by the coaching staff.
Yeah,
but I
definitely.
think since then he's settled down. He's very much your archetypal attacking kind of wing back, full back, whatever you want to call it. But defensively, I thought he was still he's pretty solid against Kilmarnock. I know he maybe didn't have. He'll have tougher tests this season. He has had tougher tests this season, but I think it was a good all-round performance. And I think when you look at how lopsided Hibs have been this season and last season to maybe a slightly lesser extent, just having somebody on that right flank who can add a goal threat, who can put crosses in, it sort of turns Hibs into a different beast. And I mean, as we've said, just been talking about the post-split fixtures, that could be vital in the race for Europe and the race for as many points as possible. So I wouldn't put it beyond them to contribute more before the season's out.
Because I think Kanaya Megwa had quite a decent run of fixtures before Passlack comes in, but it's difficult to expect a player who's quite young, relatively inexperienced in terms of holding down that sort of long-term first team role.
Yeah, but he's also a different type of player because he's very much. I mean, I would say in terms of defensive fullbacks or defensive right backs, Meg was probably the standout one at the club.
Yeah, a little bit more in that. Yeah,
you look at him in sort of one-on-one situations. You look at him against Hearts in the derby Easter Road in December, and he was very impressive. I thought in a game that would have been possibly a bit of a concern for some fans, how he would stand up to the attacking threat posed by Hearts, and I thought he put in a really good performance that day.
Held off Kizaridis very well.
Exactly, and I think that if you've got a squad and you're kind of in Hibs' case, you're wanting to be competing well in the cups. You're hopefully going to be in Europe. You're trying to sort of compete at the top end of the league and finish as high as possible. Then you need a squad that has players who are capable of excelling in certain positions. And rather than sort of relying on the same player to do 4 or 5 jobs, you possibly need 2 players who can do one job really well.
Yeah.
And
it's like going back to that whole situation with Trounsis leaving, and then you have a couple different midfielders who can run the different jobs.
Yeah, it is. And I think, Meg was a funny one. It's an entire different podcast discussion on its own. I think is his sort of his future at Hibs and his sort of where his strength lies. I think he's been unlucky in that if Hibs were playing a back four, then I think he might have played a lot more than he has. But in that sort of 3-5-2, I'm not 100% sure he's got the attacking intent to play as the wing back. And he has played as a centre back before. He played as a centre back quite a lot for the academy teams, but just not 100% sure he's got that sort of the nous to sort of play as a centre back in the first team. And you're not going to be putting him ahead of any of the centre backs who are already in the first team. So he's been a little bit unlucky in that sense. But as I say, if you're playing a back four, then he's probably your go-to man at right back. But at the moment, with the wing back role, it looks like it's Passlack to lose.
Because I think one of the big things that I certainly observed, I don't know if you felt similarly in the build up to Passlack signing for Hibs, was you saw a lot of his former fans maybe slightly grumbling about the defensive actions. I mean, obviously excels in. I remember, I can't remember, was it Bochum that played against Borussia? Not Borussia Dortmund. Sorry, that was his played against Bayern Munich. And he was involved quite heavily in an attacking sense there, just sort of down that right flank. But I think a sort of general concern was maybe when they're sort of holding back, trying to defend, he wasn't necessarily the best character. But I think in the fixtures we've seen from him so far, he's performed quite well.
He has, and I think you talk about before he came to Hibs. I think the fact that Hibs were prepared to wait for what was pretty much the whole of January to bring him in,
wasn't it? Yeah.
I think tells you how keen they were to get him on board. And I think that you did see some fans getting a little bit narked with how long it was taking. We consider how many signings they made late on in the window. But I don't think, for the most part, all of them have been worth the wait. What they've brought, when you look at Owen Elding and his contribution, Nanti Shuto and his contribution, Kai Andrews as well, and Felix Passlack. I mean, it was, as you say, the whole month. And it's, you start getting fans getting a little bit uppity, and it's like, oh, well, if he doesn't want to come. But these things can sometimes take time. And I think if you're a club and you're very keen to sign a player because you think he'll fit exactly into what you're trying to do, then sometimes it is worth the wait. And I think Passlack has proven that. I think he's come in, he's slotted in really comfortably into that wing-back role. He's dovetailing really well with the right-sided central midfield. He's getting forward. Defensively, he's been fine. And, we're forgetting that he's only 8 games, I think, into his Scottish football career. He signed a long-term contract. And when he has a full pre-season under his belt, when he's playing perhaps a bit more regularly than he was doing for Bochum, then I think that's quite an exciting prospect of what he could do. From like the start of the next season, for instance, when he's had that, he's had that chance just to sort of properly bed in and get a pre-season.
His involvement going forward, no pun intended. Let's think about. We're going to talk about the under-19s game. So I was we're in Glasgow right now. I was in Mulgall yesterday. I've completely lost the track. Yeah, it was yesterday.
It was yesterday.
It was yesterday. God, it's been a long week, and it's only Tuesday. To watch Hibs beat Rangers 4-2 for the under-19s. I think with the League Cup group stages. So Hibs have moved on to qualify for the semi-finals. Rangers were out already. Hibs had already sealed their qualification. It was just about getting a good win on the door, and they did exactly that. 2-1 down in 75 minutes, but obviously the penalty goes in through Josh McDonald, and from there the floodgates opened, and just that little forward momentum going forward in attack, it just felt like Hibs would keep scoring, and they did that through 2 goals through Logan Jimenez. Patrick, I wanted to use your vast experience in the Hibs journalism parish. I'm relatively new to not relatively new to Hibs, but relatively new to observing the club on a sort of holistic level. A couple of players that really stood out for me. I wonder if you could just add to that knowledge. First was Callum McDonald.
Yeah.
Just had such a good game, especially going forward, but also kind of tasked with, I guess, trying to make it a back 5 when out of possession, but having just all of those different runs and a real sort of versatility. Gets a great goal. I think gets an assist for the third. I wasn't entirely clear, but a really good performance.
Yeah, I mean, I think every season you look at the under-19s or the under-18s as was, you have players who are playing up a few sort of age levels. And I think Callum McDonald is one of those. I think he's still 16. He's playing for the under-19s, and he doesn't look out of place. He's obviously still got a way to go. There's a lot to learn. physically, he's maybe not quite at the same level as some of his older teammates. But I think, his ability on the ball, I don't think can be, it's not in any doubt. I've seen him play left wing back quite a bit. I think I sort of viewed him more as a kind of winger beforehand, but he has adapted quite well to that sort of, the more defensive side of it, the more kind of up and down the pitch aspect of playing as a wing back, and that kind of sort of hybrid almost that Darren McGregor's got his side playing. And I think it was the youth league games where he came on for Rudy Molotnikov against Tukoricu at Easter Road, and was really, really impressive in that role. I think he set up if memory serves, it was the third goal. But just
7th minute,
really, really kind of attack minded. I think an eye for goal as well, and I think just probably quite an exciting player. And it's always the way that when there's a player who's playing up the age levels, you think maybe this kid has something quite special. It was the same with Rudy Molotnikov. He was playing for the under-18s when he was 15. Jacob McIntyre again playing for the under-18s at 15, and Josh Landers as well, who was I think 14 when he made his debut for the under-18s. So I think anytime there's a younger player who sort of steps up, then there is that kind of belief that there must be something a bit special about them. But I think he's a really tidy player, and plenty of room for improvement, which is what the coaches would say. But I think one that is probably worth keeping an eye on, because he does have the sort of ability to play that wing back role. And he's a long way off the first team. He's a long way off senior football at the moment. But I think from what we've seen so far this season, it's been a really good kind of introduction to regular under-18s or under-19s football. And I think he's probably only going to continue to improve. So it'll be an interesting one to keep an eye on.
I think it's testament to the level of his performance that I went onto the Hibs website to look at the academy team sheet and just sort of get an idea of, because they obviously just posted second names, so while you're writing, just go through, get all the information where they've been. I looked at his and it came up saying he was 28 years old, and I was like, you know what, prepared to believe it. I mean, it's quite composed. I mean, what's he doing in this team? But it was really, really, really assured, and then kind of getting that understanding that, wow, this is somebody who's just, I think, before July-ish turned 16.
Yeah, not long turned 16.
Not long turned 16. I've really, really impressive performance. Similarly, you mentioned players really good on the ball. I thought Luke Davidson caught the eye a bit. Good skill, a lot of impetus to move forward, to use the ball against a Rangers team that just wanted to zip passes around and hold possession very well. I thought he was good in breaking that up.
Yeah, he's an interesting one, because I think can be sort of very kind of all-round in midfield. He's been training with the first team recently. HTC made his Scotland under-19 debut in the last international break. There is certainly something there. He also scored a very good goal against Tukoricu at Easter Road as well, that people will probably remember the celebration more than the goal, perhaps. I think it was a backflip to celebrate. So,
of course, yeah.
But I think he's, again, it's the sort of physicality, he's not quite there yet, but technically just very good, very attack-minded. I think certainly possibly towards the start of this season, I think somebody who kind of stood out because he was getting goals and assists, he was getting on the score sheet quite a lot. And when players do that, it catches the eye. And it's interesting as well when you look at the other midfielders in that team, because you've got people like Zach Bruce, who I think has flown under the radar a little bit just in that defensive midfield role. He's become sort of really reliable, really kind of, just really good at using the ball, but flies under the radar because he isn't maybe the most flashy. He's not sort of up there getting the goals and assists as some of his teammates are. And Josh McDonald is another one. I mean, he, I think, played in, I want to say Lewis Vaughan's testimonial under Nick Montgomery for that Hibs side. Came on and kind of come out of nowhere a little bit. I mean, we know that Nick Montgomery liked to give youngsters a chance. He gave Rory Whittaker his debut when he was still only 16. Got the likes of Dean Cleland and Josh Landers involved. And I think, that it's always interesting when, young players do get that sort of first team exposure, because it either serves as a carrot, as like, this is what you should be aiming for, this is what's expected, these are the levels you need to get to, or it can be a bit of a leveler. And, if they're getting a bit too big for their boots and they kind of think, oh right, okay, I'm not quite there yet. But I think it's interesting when you see how many of the under-19s have been training with David Gray's first team side. He obviously took a raft of them to the Netherlands in pre-season last summer. I expect he would do the same this summer to take some of the youngsters with him, partly to make up numbers, but also partly just to give them that experience and just that feeling of being around the first team, being around the senior squads, learning from some of the sort of tough old pros at the club. And, I think Davidson is someone who, the talent is there undoubtedly. And I think the next step is probably that physicality, because I don't think, looking at him, there's no way that he's ready for kind of the physicality of the Scottish Premiership just yet.
Yeah.
But again, it gives him something to aim for. It gives him that sort of that target to reach. If he can bulk up, and if it doesn't, limit his technical ability, then he's already had that exposure, and it's something for him to aim for longer term as well. I mean, still only 17, I think, as well. So he does have times on his side as well.
It's just making sure you give him that time to develop, but it is good to see that sort of tangible progression. Kind of becoming more, like you say, them in the Netherlands trip, that there is that sort of idea that these players are going to be coming through to the first team at some point when they're ready. Other thing I thought was really good was the attendance. Good number of Hibs fans there, good number of Rangers fans, a nice atmosphere. I know you said it hasn't necessarily always been that way, but it was just really pleasant and good to see people coming along to support. I'm certainly looking forward to doing more of that myself over the coming months. I think we'll leave it there for this evening's podcast. A trip to Aberdeen. Patrick won't be around. I will be around, and I'll have lots of content for you from that game. So do make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel and tuned in to all of our social media for regular updates, including that very important game at Pittodrie